tonight, MAGA divided. Donald Trump's support for Israel's actions against Iran is splitting his own base, pitting Israel hawks against those who fear the United States is being pulled into an even bigger regional fight. But remember, when the president campaigned on this message.
I will stop the chaos in the Middle East, and I will prevent World War III. I'm going to keep us out of World War III. We're not going to have World War III, but I will prevent World War III.
Former Fox host Tucker Carlson sent Trump a stern warning this morning in his newsletter. Quote, the United States should not at any level participate in a war with Iran. No funding, no American troops, no troops on the ground. Drop Israel. Let them fight their own wars. What happens next will define Donald Trump's presidency. Ashley Allison and Pete Seat are back at the table. Ravi is also back with us as well. So, Pete, this is an inevitable divide playing out in MAGA world where Trump, you know, he told them he would end all the wars, and now he has not ended all the wars.
Well, it's inevitable because there is an element of the MAGA base that is divorced from reality, and that is the reality of leadership. They've never read an intelligence briefing. They've never sat in the Situation Room. Donald Trump has had the benefit of doing that. The most consequential decision they've made is choosing Crest or Colgate. And so they don't understand the importance of these decisions, nor do they embrace the burden of American leadership and being the world's lone superpower and having the largest economy. And it's just, they're clueless.
Argue that also describes what Donald Trump campaigned on. I mean, he campaigned on getting out of, Iraq or getting out of Afghanistan in his first term. Then Ukraine hasn't happened. Then stopping the Gaza war hasn't happened. He has been the one who has fed, if it's a delusion, he's fed the delusion.
I think he's very good at sort of spotting the mood. And I'm a Crest man, by the way. But I think, in as much as there's a constituency on the left and the right that really does want to end all of these wars around the world, Trump wants to cater to that. He is also, I think, looking at this moment and saying, well, Israel's taking out Iran's nukes. This is actually quite popular in the region. It's popular in the United States. It's a win as well for a wing of his party. So why not milk some of that? I think he's just looking at each faction and how they're reacting and seeing what he can get out of it.
And I think this is what we've been missing for so long as Republicans is leadership. Like, just Donald Trump should tell us.
Is
I know,
exerting
it's
leadership.
I know, it's surprising.
I just wanted, for the record, make sure
he just needs to tell us what he thinks.
Yeah.
He keeps playing this both sides things or staying quiet, but it's interesting because where is he in the Russian-Ukraine conflict? He can't say Russia invaded Ukraine, and so nobody even knows where he really stands on that. I remember a saying that I have memorized over and over, the short part of it. Ronald Reagan gave at the Goldwater Convention. He said, we can have peace and we can have it tomorrow. Surrender. And there is a surrender caucus in the MAGA base that basically thinks peace at any cost, including at the reputation of the United States, is worth it. And I don't.
I think one thing, though, is that Donald Trump makes a lot of promises that he can't keep, and because they're empty promises. So you say, I'm going to end the war in day one of my administration. Many of us said that's not going to happen, especially if you're not going to tell the truth about what happened for the war to start. And there are people, to your point, in the Republican Party and MAGA who believe him everything he says, even if he says the sky is green. They believe everything he says, and they do not question it. I think what you're seeing now, though, with Tucker Carlson, even Steve Bannon, he was saying, Israel has to go at it alone.
Let me play that sound from Steve Bannon earlier today on the War Room.
Israel puts Israel first, as they should. I have no problem with that. But America's got to put America first. And one thing I don't like seeing is all this cheerleading going on right now, because when you're in the Middle East and dealing with ancient civilizations that are over there, unexpected things happen. We know that from 20 years of war in Afghanistan, in Iraq.
They're isolationists, though, and so it is for them. It's only about America. I'm not gonna be like Adam and give Donald Trump the leadership credibility stamp of approval tonight. Not that I think that was what you were doing, but
I gave him the lack of it.
Okay, right. But I think Donald Trump is not stupid, and he knows that what happened last night, which is why they put the statement out they did last night, saying we did not support this move, and now is backtracking. Even that saying last night one thing and then today flipping the script. It's whatever he thinks at the end of the day will suit him better. And I'm not even sure it's what will suit America better.
Pete, what do you make of that last point that Bannon made, which is that our experience in this region has been, to put it mildly, terrible? We have gotten into essentially quagmires by intervening, and there is a fear, especially among some of the younger folks who lived through that, that this could be a very similar situation. And also, as we've been discussing earlier in the show, we don't know how this ends. It looks like bombs falling everywhere in Iran right now, but what's the end game?
And those are legitimate fears, to the points you made and the points that Steve Bannon made. But we do have interests in the Middle East. That has not changed. But what I think is so interesting about this is these are the same people who keep saying, art of the deal, art of the deal, don't take anything off the table. And here they are begging the president of the United States to take things off the table.
I mean, maybe because there's been no deals.
Yeah, there's been no deals.
I mean, I don't know. I'm sorry to say, but there's been no deals.
And
There's
honestly,
no
again,
Ukraine deal, no Gaza deal.
It's hard to see MAGA coalesce around anything when the president doesn't articulate his foreign policy goals. And I think it's just so important because you can't, when you're campaigning, you can do whatever you want, right? You can say whatever you want. When you're president, you're going to be faced with things like, hey, Israel's bombing Iran. And I don't see how this stops now with Iran with the nuclear program intact. And honestly, the United States is going to have to make a statement either way on what's happening, and more than just silently, I think, intercepting some missiles.
CNN's chief international correspondent, Clarissa Ward, joins us now from Eilat, Israel. Clarissa, you just arrived there. Tell us what the scene is like tonight on the ground.
Well, Abby, you can probably see behind me the sun is just starting to come up here. It's been quiet for the last couple of hours. Prior to that, we were seeing quite a lot of activity in the skies. We heard fighter jets as we were driving across the border with Egypt because Israel's airspace is completely closed. We could see intercepts taking place. And when you talk to Israelis, and even just being here a few hours on the ground, you can see really a very clear difference, Abby, from other trips we have done here, from last year's tit for tat back and forth between Israel and Iran. And when you look at those startling images of the enormous damage that was done by that Iranian ballistic missile on the outskirts of Tel Aviv, as you mentioned, one woman killed, and you saw this night sky lighting up over Tel Aviv, some of them being intercepted, those missiles, but some of them getting through. And the power of those missiles, the ferocity of the kind of roar as they made impact. When you talk to people here, there's a real sense that this is a significant escalation, that this is leading to a new chapter. And that's something that is being echoed across the region. This is a region tonight, or I should say this morning, Abby, really on a knife edge. We've heard Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, basically vowing very hard punishment for those attacks that took place on civilian areas. Of course, Israeli missiles have also been falling on civilian areas inside Iran. And now, of course, as well, you have that threat that you mentioned from the Iranians that anyone who supports Israel in its defense, and this is a not-so-veiled threat towards the U.S. as well, is liable to be attacked. Their regional bases liable to be attacked. And that, of course, is part of the reason that we saw U.S. personnel pulled out of several embassies across the region. So definitely a sense that things are not getting quieter, that they are escalating, the dawn just breaking here, and we will see what this day brings, Abby.
And Clarissa, what is your sense of the targeting here of some of these ballistic missiles that are coming in from Iran? When we saw those attacks a few months ago, this barrage of missiles coming in, very few of them actually made it into Israel, in part due to the Iron Dome. I wonder if the sense is that Iran is deliberately targeting civilian infrastructure, or is their aim just not what it should be if they're trying to get at some of the military infrastructure pieces that they might be after?
I mean, I think there's no question, Abby, that when we were here last summer, it was pretty clear what the targets were of these various missile attacks that were coming from Iran. The impression that we have here is that the gloves have effectively come off now, right? Because the sites that you're seeing in Tel Aviv and around Tel Aviv this evening in central Israel, like, this is not like anything that people here have seen before, and certainly that we have seen before. And that's why you're seeing such a strong response from the defense minister, accusing Iran of deliberately targeting civilians. Of course, we don't exactly know what the intended target was, but make no mistake, this is a new chapter. It's a dangerous chapter. It's a dramatic escalation. That's why you are seeing leaders across the world, particularly in the region, but also in Europe, desperately calling on all parties to kind of pull back from the brink before things get even worse than they already are. But at the moment, Abby, no clear exit ramp in sight. And despite President Trump's urges for Iran to join those talks in Oman over the weekend, it's really looking rather unlikely that they would do that, because it would be seen essentially as a capitulation of sorts, Abby.
This is what the sky looked like over Tel Aviv for the more than 4 million people who live in that metro area, as Israel's Iron Dome system raced to stop Iranian missiles and drones that you see here. This is what they heard. As you saw there, some Iranian missiles made it through. Meanwhile, in Tehran, that country's own air defenses sprung into action. In this video that we see from Iran's semi-official news agency of what they say is their active air defense system following another round of Israeli strikes there. State media reports that several explosions have been heard in parts of the Iranian capital. An American official tells CNN that the United States is playing an active role in helping Israel intercept Iranian missiles. As for President Trump, he praised Israel's strikes overnight on Iran and took to Truth Social twice before Iran retaliated this afternoon, I should note, where he urged Iran to make a nuclear deal, in his words, quote, before there is nothing left. At the White House, the president spent the day behind closed doors, though you see here his defense secretary and energy secretary entering the West Wing. That's around 10 a.m. this morning. Then Secretary Hegseth and the Joint Chiefs Chairman, retired Lieutenant General Dan Kane, were seen leaving the campus not until closer to 7 p.m. this evening. Here's what the day looked like behind the scenes from our reporting. It's been an incredibly busy day here at the White House after President Trump started by convening his top national security aides inside the Situation Room to discuss Israel's strike on Iran overnight. He's been on the phone virtually nonstop and also having a ton of meetings with aides. I actually saw his envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, darting from one West Wing meeting to another earlier today. Witkoff, of course, had been at the center of those talks between the United States and Iran, trying to get a nuclear deal. Now he was in meetings inside the West Wing, as, of course, there are questions on whether or not those talks that were supposed to happen with Iran are still going to happen on Sunday. And also, as that comes, as Iran has been responding to Israel and striking cities like Tel Aviv. I want to get straight to CNN's chief international correspondent, Clarissa Ward in Eilat, Israel. Clarissa, obviously it's just after 4 a.m. there in southern Israel. What have you seen and heard so far since you've been on the ground?
Well, Caitlin, we can actually hear a drone overhead at the moment as we were crossing the border from Egypt, because, of course, the airspace over Israel is closed. The airspace over Jordan is closed. We had to fly to Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt and drive in. And as we were driving towards the border, you could see the night sky lighting up as those Iranian missiles were presumably being intercepted by the Iron Dome. We could also hear a lot of fighter jets in the skies. Most recently, I would say about half an hour ago, a little quieter now, except for that drone. But certainly the expectation here and across the region is that things are not going to stay quieter. Things are very much on a course to continue to escalate. A lot of concern and anxiety about what that escalation might look like. We heard from the Iranians this evening essentially promising that they would retaliate against the regional bases of any force that supports or defends Israel. That is very much a not veiled threat against U.S. bases across the region. Obviously, we had seen the U.S. pull personnel from various embassies. But even here, Caitlin, in Israel, and I should say we've only been here a couple of hours, but when you talk to people, there's a sense that it's a little different this time. When they saw those missiles making impact on the outskirts of Tel Aviv, when they saw the damage caused by those impacts, when they heard the force of those intercepts and blasts, it really did feel, according to people we've spoken to, different to cases in the past when we have seen the sort of usual barrages coming from the Houthis in Yemen, from Hezbollah in Lebanon, from Hamas in Gaza. And so there is now a very kind of clear-eyed expectation that this is going to escalate further, that there isn't an obvious exit ramp for either party in this conflict, and certainly anxiety around what tomorrow will bring and what the next few days will bring, Caitlin.
I think that's a good point, Clarissa, because some people might be watching all of this and say, well, of course, it's Israel, it's Iran, you know, it's kinetic in the Middle East. But there is a question, even among officials in Washington that I was talking to today, about whether or not this is different and what that difference signifies and what it means.
It's absolutely different, Caitlin. I mean, we were here all last summer when there was a number of back and forths between Israel and Iran. That was already a significant escalation. But the attack that we saw Israel perpetrate against Iran last night, the scale, the scope, the essential decapitation of Iran's senior military leadership, the intelligence breach, all of this has really taken things to a completely new level. I mean, this really is now territory that has not been navigated. There is clearly a lot of anxiety, particularly in the region, a desire to try to de-escalate. The Europeans, I came from Europe this morning, a lot of anxiety in Europe as well. Desperate calls from many different countries for both sides to kind of pull back from the brink. But as I said before, it's not really clear at this stage what pulling back from the brink would look like. We've heard President Trump reiterate, oh, come to these talks this weekend in Oman. Let's hash out a deal. That's your only off-ramp. But for Iran to capitulate like that in this moment and what that would mean for its domestic political audience, it's difficult to see that that's a viable political move for Iran at the moment, Caitlin.
Yeah, Clarissa Ward on the ground in Israel. We'll check in with you for updates throughout the hour. Also here tonight is the Israeli ambassador to the United States, Yael Leiter. And it's great to have you here, Mr. Ambassador, because the question on what we were just talking with Clarissa about, the attacks that are happening in Tel Aviv tonight, we saw some of those Iranian missiles getting through and hitting on the ground in the area. Can you just update us on what the latest is in the aftermath of that and how many people have been injured?
Well, we faced 3 salvos of ballistic missiles fired from Iran today, about 150 in total, and some 40 people have been injured. 1 woman was killed. And we expect that the Iranians, who have a considerable volume of ballistic missiles, somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000, will continue to fire them.
So you can confirm that a woman was killed as a result of Iran strikes in Israel tonight?
Yes. Look, it's important to understand they're firing at our civilians. We're firing at their nuclear infrastructure and the people involved in the nuclear infrastructure. We have targeted strikes in Iran in order to neutralize their nuclear weapons program, because the nuclear weapons program is intended to annihilate us. They're firing ballistic missiles into civilian population centers is something entirely different. They're targeting our civilians. This is a criminal state that is on the road to achieve a nuclear weapon, which we have to mitigate. It's that simple.
Has Iran's response and the strikes that they've promised will continue, is it overwhelming Israel's ability to defend itself?
No, Israel will not be overwhelmed. We're a very resilient people. We've confronted one of Iran's proxies now for 1.5 years in the form of Hamas. We've lost many people. We lost 1,200 people on October 7th. We've lost close to another 900 soldiers. By American standards, that would be about 65,000 people in 1.5 years. But we're a resilient people. We are united in this cause. We have learned the lesson of history. When maniacs say that they're going to kill you, you have to believe them. Just 80 years ago, there was a little man with a mustache running around Europe saying he was going to annihilate the Jewish people, and nobody believed him. Everybody sat on their hands, and we lost a third of our people, and the war was thrust into a Second World War, which cost 65 million lives. Well, the bearded guy in Tehran is very similar to the little guy with the mustache. When he says he's going to destroy us, that's what he intends to do, and we don't intend to allow him to do that.
Does Israel consider itself to be at war with Iran tonight?
Israel is in war not with the people of Iran. The people of Iran themselves suffer terribly under this lunatic regime, these mullahs that are really a death cult that celebrate death. So we're in a war against a regime that is intent on achieving nuclear power. And look, we're not the only ones who have told the mullahs that they can't have a nuclear bomb. The President of the United States has been very clear. From the moment that he entered office, President Trump has said the Iranians cannot have a nuclear weapon. You can't be any clearer than that. So what we are doing is in concert with the policy, the foreign policy of the United States, the security policy of the United States, because we are allies. And we're operating the best interest not only of the United States, but really of Western civilization. It would be high time for our European friends to come on board as well.